Mom kicked me out to make room for her new family. After finding out that I had done well, she showed up and demanded money for my boys' school fees. When I said no, she hit me. To give you some history, I was born to a 20-year-old mother, and I never knew my biological father. My mom told me that he had never wanted to have kids with her because they had only been together for a few months at the time. She told him that he could leave if she got pregnant, and he took her up on her offer. She told me that she was very angry that she broke up with him. He wasn't willing to pay child support, and she didn't want to take any from him. So it was easier for both of them to just stop talking. Luckily, my grandparents were always there for her and helped her a lot. By doing this, she was able to finish school and get a job. There were a few dates when I was younger, but Mom finally started going out with Harry when I was 8 years old. He was her boyfriend for more than 3 years before they got married, and they had worked together before. I got along fine with Harry. He didn't dislike me, even though we weren't close, and we were happy living together. I was one of the happy ones when my mom got pregnant 4 years after they got married. Looking back, I probably should have known what was coming, but I was too focused on the idea that my mom would always be there for me. She had to go through a lot of pain to raise me, so it was clear that she wasn't going to waste it by leaving me. So I thought it was probably just a short-term thing, and that things would get better again, even though we were drifting apart, and she made it clear that she was leaving me when she married Harry. I did everything I could to help her while she was pregnant, but she got very upset around me all the time, so I tried to avoid making her upset. But 6 months after giving birth to her twins, she and Harry told me they wanted to have a serious talk with me, and that they couldn't have me in the house anymore because they had to take care of their 2 kids. I guess I hadn't hidden myself well enough. They tried to gently encourage me by telling me how hard it was for them to take care of our big family on their small salary, and how they couldn't legally send me out without getting in trouble because I was still a kid. At the time, I think I was 16 years old. Being honest, I don't see any reason why 2 web developers pay, which has been enough to support 2 adults, a teenager, and 2 babies, couldn't also support themselves. It was clear that they were bluffing. Even though they only wanted me to leave the house, I tried to come up with ways to keep that from happening because I really didn't want to. While I was trying to explain that if money was tight, I would get a job, my mother told me that she wanted to save money and other resources for the twins, who really needed them right then. It was enough for me to hear that they deserved to stay with them more than I did. They didn't need this more. I knew I had to leave after that because it was clear I wasn't wanted. They pushed me in the right way because they wanted me to go and knew I was proud enough to know they didn't want me. Their plan worked, even though they didn't tell me where to go when I left. They hadn't really kicked me out because they hadn't forced me, but I would call it the same thing because they pushed me into a corner with my back to the wall and I didn't have any other choice. I went straight to my grandparents' house. They were mad at my mom for what she did, but they didn't stop her because they wanted to be there for the twins. At age 16, I had to get a part-time job because it was clear that my grandparents would no longer be able to help me with money because they were getting older. When my mom and Harry took the kids to see my grandparents, I would sometimes see them. They never asked about me, and when they did, they were always very polite with me. They seemed happier without me living with them, and I didn't think they missed me at all. Nothing I could do could change the fact that my mother seemed much less irritable than she always was. It broke my heart. I lived with my grandparents before I went to college. Even back then, my mom didn't talk to me, and my grandparents were clearly too old and sick to help me get settled in my apartment. I had to rely on a few friends to do it. I had to get a family friend to co-sign the loan, because my mom and Harry turned it down for the same reason they kicked me out of school. That because they had the twins very late in life, they wanted to keep their money and assets for their children's future. Lucky for me, one of my uncles stepped in and agreed to co-sign the paper as long as I promised him he would never have to pay me anything. In order to make sure I wouldn't have to miss any bills after I graduated, and to get my finances in order. I worked while I was in college and finished my classes. Once I started college, I pretty much stopped talking to my mom, and I didn't start talking to her again until I finished. Only my grandparents were there. My mother didn't even stop to tell me how proud she was at the time. For my elders' sake, I stopped being a burden on them and started working. After college, I moved out on my own. In the beginning, it was very hard because I didn't make much money but still had to pay for rent, groceries, energy, and start paying down my debt. I also had to make sure I had money saved for the future. That is no longer the case, thank goodness. I think it was what I would really call limited income. It took me a long time to get to where I am now in the company, but I'm relatively happy with my job. There's a lot more I could say, but I'm proud of how far I've come, especially since I didn't have much help. My mother learnt about my wealthy lifestyle even though we hadn't talked in a long time, which shocked me. It's almost 33 years since I started my job, and I still work as a manager at the same company. Being promoted was a big deal for me about 4 months ago, but I wanted to keep it a secret, so not many people knew about it. One person I told about this was my uncle, because I wanted to thank him for co-signing my loan application when I was having trouble getting the money to pay for college. From what I understand, he just recently met my mom and Harriet at a family meeting. He told Harriet to get in touch with me so she could finally congratulate me on my success after years of ignoring me. His intentions were good, but it didn't work out so well because she didn't even try to thank me in person. Anyway, my mom recently came over to my house with Harry after hearing about it and insisted on talking to me. Because I went to college, I lost touch with her, as I've already said. Also, I stopped seeing my mom everywhere and cut her off from my life after I graduated because I didn't think it was worth it to try to make up with her. She didn't look much worse off either. I doubt she even noticed. All of my family knew I didn't like talking about my mother, except for my grandparents. I didn't really talk to anyone else in my family. Also, I didn't really talk to my uncle very often. Because of this, I had no idea that my mom and Harry had been having serious money problems for the past 2 years. They told me how hard things have been for them when they came to my house. That's when I learned about it. I guess I was hoping for the best, but the only reason I let them in was because I thought they were finally going to make things right. Before they even told me how proud they were of my accomplishments, they said that they had heard from my uncle that I had been given this important raise. I was one of the youngest people in this job at my company at the time, and they were surprised that I hadn't told them. It was funny because I was surprised that they expected me to talk to them at all after not talking to them for so long, let alone share good news about my life and work. People even told me they were upset that I had cut them out of my life because they wanted to be there for their kids more than for me as a youth and needed their time, money, and resources more than I would have. They said that I had changed my behavior towards them by pulling away from them after I moved in with my grandparents. They thought I would handle the situation with maturity and understand why their goals had changed. Anyway, I don't understand why they think I would agree with their choice to keep me out of the house. They used gaslighting to make me believe I was the bad person for being mad that they kicked me out of the house so they could spend more time with their kids. That's how they started our meeting after all these years. After that, they quickly talked about how hard the past few years had been for them without giving me a chance to tell my side of the story. They started by talking about how they had started their own business but failed horribly because it didn't catch on. They were trying to hide their losses, but they needed the money right away because the twins had to start planning for college and other things. It became clear to me then why they had come to me in the first place. They needed the money. They didn't waste any time getting right to the point. They even tried to make it less harsh by saying I could make up for it by paying for my siblings' training. When they first found out that I was doing so well and hadn't called them yet, they were very angry. I couldn't believe they would try to make it look like they were helping me by letting me pay for the college education of 2 kids I didn't even know anymore because I had left them before. I told them right away that I wasn't going to do any of that and that they were being very rude by thinking they could use manipulation to get into this position. These people made me mad, so I told them that they were the reason I had to work and pay for college because they wouldn't help me financially because they wanted to save for their kids' future. Because they thought they earned it more than I did at the time. They made it clear that they wanted to put their twins above me, and I never questioned it or caused them any problem after that. But they couldn't expect anything from me now because they had already decided who to give priority to, kicked me out, and stopped talking to me for a long time. I didn't think they had the right to expect me to talk to them or give them money anymore. I told them this because I thought they would want to save their money and time for kids who really needed them. Instead of trying to control my feelings, they could pay for their college education with the money they saved by getting rid of me. I told them to leave because I was done talking to them and didn't have anything else to say. I thought that maybe they had learned their lesson and were coming to my house to say sorry for how they had treated me for so long, even though I had been to let them in the first place. They were also angry, and as I yelled at them and told them to leave, they told me I wasn't innocent in this case. In defense, they said that I was always very excited and interested in their life when we lived together and that I was really annoying. It's hard for me to understand why they had a problem with me since I was a preteen, and they were trying to stay in touch with me while they were moving away. They then said I wasn't better than them because I was forgetting all the years my mother had taken care of me and raised me by herself, and I was turning down their request right now. I could use this as a chance to help her and make things right. I was here, though, not being thankful for all they have done for me in the past and not caring about it. I thought it was silly of them to bring that up because I was a child at the time and couldn't have chosen not to depend on them. I wasn't asking them to help me out, and I would have needed their money, even if I had tried to be less of a bother. When they thought I was old enough to handle things on my own, they pushed me to leave home. After I did, they kicked me out and didn't acknowledge my existence for almost 18 years. Even after all of that, I still couldn't understand why they would want me to return them for all the help they had given me in the past. The fight got very personal and ugly after that, and I told them I would call the cops if they didn't leave my property right away. Before they left, my mom said that she had given up a lot as a child to be a good mom to me, and that was the only time she had ever expected me to understand and let her put other people before herself. It seems like I was trying to make her look like the bad guy instead of the victim. She thought I should have been more understanding instead of ignoring her for so long. It's been bugging me ever since, and I'm not sure if I'm to blame for expecting too much from my mother or if she's just lying to me. I am very sure that I am right, but I have decided to post on Reddit to get your honest opinion just in case. Since my stepdad and mother and I are having a hard time with money right now, I would offer to not pay for my half-siblings' college fees. Correction, I told my uncle that what he did was wrong and inappropriate. No matter how good his goals were, there was no doubt that his actions had bad results. He put me in this mess because he told my mom about what I was doing and gave her my address and phone number without my permission. He really sorry for what he did and said he didn't know they were having money problems or that my mom would do something like this. If he knew that, he wouldn't have told them anything about my life. He also admitted that he shouldn't have been talking about these things with my mom and that we could have fixed the problem without his help. I'm not going to cut him out of my life because his heart wasn't really in the wrong place. He only made a mistake, but if that had been the truth, I would have been much more mad at him. Additionally, he made it possible for me to go to college in the first place because no one else was willing to co-sign my loan application unless he was willing to. Think about it, I might not be here at all if it weren't for him. And I don't want to show that I'm not grateful for him. But because I'm not a fool, I told him what he did was wrong. It wasn't unfair what I did, and I think I found the right mix. We're getting along great. I won't hold this against him because I kind of needed this resolution. The current issue has also been talked over with my grandparents by my mother. They agree with me and have promised to try to get her and Harry to support me. So they have always stayed in touch with my mom. It makes sense that they didn't want to lose touch with their other grandchildren. Even though they know how hard things are for their family, they don't think what they're doing to me is okay or fair. That's how they feel about it, and I think it makes sense. Update 1, it's been almost 9 days since I talked to my mom last. Since then, she's been emailing me every other day a list of all the nice things she's done for me since I was a baby. This makes me feel like I owe her something, I think. She didn't do me a favor by raising me by herself. She was required by law to do everything she did for me. I don't see the point of any of it. Another thing is that she didn't do anything for the whole time that was needed. She did it for as long as it was easy for her. To save money and time for the future and the twins, she and her husband decided to kick me out as soon as I started to cause them problems. Now that the twins are adults and we are in the future, I think they should stop trying to control me and make me feel guilty and instead depend on themselves. Because I wasn't reading the emails, I decided a few days ago to write her back and tell her everything I had written so far. Feeling hurt, she started to say again that I wasn't thankful. Just now, I told her that calling me anything she wanted would not change the truth. She was also a terrible mother, which is why I didn't want to talk to her anymore. She used a new email address to try to bother me again after I blocked the one she was using to send me emails. I did the same thing for that one because she never did it for me. I'll keep doing it until she knows I won't worry about her anymore. That we're talking about it now makes me happy because I know that everything will be fine soon and I'll be able to move on. They were only allowed into my home and talked to that day because I still thought they had changed and were there to congratulate me and make things right. But talking to them made me realize that they were the kind of people who could feel things like sorrow, guilt, or shame. After seeing again how selfish and smart they are, I have given up any chance of ever making things right with them. Update 2. I think my mom's visit to my workplace earlier today was the strangest thing she's ever done. I was lucky that I wasn't working today, because she left really quickly and failed in her plans. You made me so happy by giving me the day off because I was sick. I'm sure she would have gotten angry or done something horrible to make me look bad if I were at work. I found out about it when the office called to say that my mom had arrived at work and insisted on meeting me, even though she knew I hadn't yet shown up. I told the receptionist I would talk to her in person because I didn't know what she was going to do. I was already very scared, but when they called me, I told her I was at home and that I would sue her so badly that she would be so embarrassed and ashamed that she would not even be able to send her kids anywhere else. I think it really scared her because I tried really hard to look scary, and I guess I succeeded. The first thing she told me was that she would only leave my job if I agreed to meet her in person. I informed her that she had no right to make claims as I was sure she couldn't pay for to be sued at this time. My boss would definitely sue her if things got out of hand, but that's a different story because they won't be as understanding as I am. So, it would be best for her to just leave without making a fuss. When I told her that, she gave the phone back to the receptionist and I think she left. I didn't get any calls or messages from work about this. However, it was definitely close. Because I don't want this to happen again, I've decided to talk to a lawyer to see if there are any safety measures I can take. Although she hasn't made any threats against me, I'm not sure if this needs a protection order. I will still talk to the lawyer and try to work things out though. I guess I'll just have to hope that this most recent meeting was bad enough for her to want to leave me alone for now. I think we now have enough evidence to get a protection order, so I guess I don't need to worry about whether to file one or not. The week before, my mom came to see me at work, but I was able to get her to stop bothering me. After everything that happened this week, I think that a protection order should be made against her for everyone. A few days ago, she was waiting outside my door when I got home from work. I told her right away that I didn't want to fight with her and that I would call the cops if she didn't leave. I had my phone in my hand and was about to call when she ran at me, throwing me to the ground and throwing my phone over. She started trying to beat me up and yelling at me all the time, saying that I was to blame for everything that was wrong in her life. Though I was shocked by how crazy the whole thing was, it took me a while to try to fight back. But once I did, I quickly beat her because I work out and am younger than her. Thankfully, my neighbors knew something wasn't right because they heard yelling and called the cops. They also came to my aid. They even held my mother down while we waited for the cops to arrive. When they finally did, I made the choice to press charges. She's having a hard time right now, so I talked to my lawyer and asked for a protection order against her. That's what my grandma said when he helped her out that day, so I don't think Harry will be back anytime soon. I think he took the kids to be with his parents. Since my injuries were not very bad, she was only charged with a misdemeanor. When he questioned her behaviors and told her she couldn't be acting that way, she started to argue with him. I think she lost it because it was clear she was having a hard time and couldn't accept that things were going well for me. I'm not going to feel sad for her because she is responsible for what she is going through right now. As soon as the protection order against her comes through, I plan to move out of my small house and into a bigger one. I'm making more money now. This is why. So there's never been a better time, and I think I'll finally start looking into my options. Being connected to someone like that is embarrassing, so I really hope my mom gets through whatever she's going through and tries to be a normal person. Not only that, but she was mean to my grandparents, and they have told me they no longer want to be around her. Because of this, she is the only one to blame for everyone staying away from her. I don't care about that anyway.